Welcome to Back to Basics. It's a series where we strip away the noise and rebuild the foundations that actually make change stick. Because here's what I've learned as a coach. Most people don't need more strategies. They need stronger roots. And that's exactly what we're building together at Haven Hub Life. This week, we're starting with boundaries, and by the end of this episode, you'll finally understand why strengthening this one skill changes everything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever said yes when your whole body was screaming no? Maybe it was taking on that extra project at work when you were already drowning. Maybe it was lending money you didn't really have. Or maybe it was showing up again for someone who never showed up for you. And then afterwards, there's that familiar feeling. You know the feeling I'm talking about. It's resentment. Then there's exhaustion. And there's that voice whispering to you, why do I keep doing this to myself? Now here's the truth no one is telling you. The problem isn't that you're too nice. The problem is that you were never taught what a boundary actually is, or that you're even allowed to have them. And that's exactly what we're changing today. Now, if that held your attention, then you know this episode is for you. Do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series. We're building something powerful over these weeks, and I don't want you to fall behind or miss out. So why are we starting this entire series with boundaries? Well, because boundaries are the foundation of everything else we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about things like your values, your confidence, your habits, your relationships. None of it holds without you having boundaries. Now, I want you to think about it for a second. How can you live by your values if you can't protect your time and energy? How can you trust yourself if you keep breaking promises to yourself by overcommitting to others? How can you build healthy relationships if you're constantly abandoning yourself to keep the peace? You can't. That's the thing. And here's why it matters right now. We just came out of years of chaos. We've recently had a pandemic. There's the current economic stress. There's political tension. The exhaustion of being always available in a world that has everyone glued to their phones. And what did most of us actually do? The thing is, we actually all overfunctioned. We said yes to almost everything because we were in survival mode. But survival mode has to have an expiry date. It has to end at some point. And for many of us, that point has already come. It's already expired. You see, people see the burnout. They see the resentment and then the feeling of losing themselves as a character flaw. And that's not what this is. This isn't that. It's actually you having a boundary crisis. So today we're going to go back to the basics. We're starting at the root. Now, if we haven't met yet, welcome to Haven Hub Life. I'm Lolly, a life coach and your guide and fellow traveler for high-functioning women navigating life's hardest chapters with dignity and honesty. And each week we name the quiet struggles. We unpack the emotional weight and explore the shifts that move you towards clarity and what you actually want. You don't need to fix yourself. You just need a new way through. So, first of all, what actually is a boundary? We keep saying boundary this, boundary that, but what is this boundary? Now, here's the simplest definition I like to say. A boundary is a clear statement of what you will and will not accept, and the actions you'll take to protect that. Now, notice I said action, because a boundary without action is just a wish. Saying I don't like when you raise your voice at me is expressing a preference. Saying when you raise your voice, I'm going to leave the room until we can talk calmly. Now that's a boundary. You see, the key distinction is that boundaries are about what you will do, not about controlling what others do. And I think people miss that sometimes. Now let's talk about why this feels so hard to hold a boundary. If you struggle with boundaries, you're not weak. You're not broken. You're actually probably just trained. So many of us grow up in environments where boundaries were seen as selfish. They were disrespectful or seen as talking back. We learned that love meant all this endless sacrifice, that being good meant being agreeable. Or maybe you learned that setting a boundary meant conflict, and conflict for a lot of people equals danger. So you become a master at reading the rooms. You become a master at managing the moods around you and shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. uncomfortable. Does this sound familiar at all? Because it does to me. Now, here's what I want you to know. That was all part of your survival strategy. It kept you safe as a child, but it's now keeping you stuck as an adult. The discomfort you feel around boundaries isn't a sign you shouldn't set them. That's not what this is. It's a sign that you actually need to set these boundaries and hold them. Now, let me give you an example you might recognize. I want you to think about the character Beth from Yellowstone. Now, if you haven't seen the Yellowstone, you gotta watch it. It's one of my favorite shows, and Beth is actually my favorite character. You see, Beth is extreme. I'm not saying be like Beth in all things now, but there are some things that she does get right. She is crystal clear about what she will and will not accept. She doesn't hint at them. She doesn't hope people will figure it out eventually. No, no, no. She states it, and then she acts on it. Now, when you contrast that with someone like, let's say, Monica and Friends, in the early seasons of Friends, that is, she was constantly overfunctioning, she was people-pleasing, needing all this external validation, exhausting herself trying to be everything to everyone. The thing is, most of us live somewhere between these two. We admire the Beths of the world, but our day-to-day is closest to the Monicas of the world, wondering why we're tired all the time. Now, the goal isn't to become this cold, hard person. The goal is to become clear, because clarity is kindness. Kindness to yourself and to others. When you're clear about your boundaries, people don't have to guess. They know where they stand, and you know where you stand with yourself. Now, let's do some reframing, because the beliefs you carry about boundaries are probably the biggest things in your way. Now, sometimes we say things like, setting a boundary is selfish. That's how we see it. That's how we perceive it. Whereas really what we should look at it like instead is that setting boundaries is being self-responsible. You see, when you don't set a boundary, you're not being generous. You're actually pushing the responsibility for your well-being onto other people. You're silently expecting them to read your mind. Now, that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you either. You see, taking responsibility for your own limits isn't selfish. It's actually mature. It's being honest with yourself and honest with everyone else. It's what healthy adults do. Now let's look at another thing that we tell ourselves that we need to reframe. So a lot of the time people will say something like, if I set a boundary, I'll lose the relationship. The thing is, what we really need to start saying to ourselves is something along the lines of, a relationship that requires me to abandon myself isn't a relationship. It's a hostage situation, and we're not doing that anymore. Now, here's a hard truth. If someone only stays in your life because you have no boundaries, what are they actually staying for? Is it access to your time, energy, and labor without limits? Something to think about. You see, real relationships can handle boundaries. In fact, they need them. Boundaries create the safety that allows intimacy. I find that people will say things like, I should be able to handle more. Whereas really what we should really be thinking is, my capacity is not a character flaw. You see, some of you have made handling a lot as your identity. You pride yourself on being the one who can carry everything. Now, here's what that really is. And let me hold your hand here when I tell you this. You see, you trying to carry everything is a trauma response that has been dressed up as strength. You are actually allowed to have limits. You're allowed to need your rest. And you're allowed to say that, listen, this is too much. And this doesn't make you weak by saying that. It actually just makes you human, because we all have our limits. Now let's get practical with this. Here's my 4-step framework for setting boundaries that actually stick. We're going to use something called the Name It framework. So we'll start with N, which is notice. Identify the resentment signal. The thing is that your resentment is data. Every time you feel that tight, bitter feeling, I want you to pay attention. That's your boundary rater going up, like saying red flag, red flag. So this week, I want you to start a resentment log. When you feel it, write it down. For example, you'll say, look, what happened in this situation that had my antennas going up? What did I say yes to that I wanted to say no to today? What need of mine went unmet? Don't judge this resentment log. Just notice it. Have awareness, because awareness of it is step 1. Now, the second one in the Name It framework is articulate. So you need to get clear on the boundary that you want to create. So you name it using a certain formula, which I'm going to give you now. You say something along the lines of, I need insert the thing when this happens, and I will insert the thing. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. You say something like, I need my evenings to be work-free. When I receive a non-urgent email after 6 p.m., I will respond the next business day. Or something else like, I need respect in conversations. When someone raises their voice at me, I will pause the conversation until we can speak calmly. Now, notice that you're not demanding that anybody else changes. That's not what you're doing. You're stating what you need and what you will do. The third step in the name it framework is called make it known. So you need to communicate it. This is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. You have to actually say it out loud. You can use the script as a template. So you say something like, hey, look, I've realized I need to make a change. So going forward, and then you put the boundary in there, what you don't want, right? And this isn't about you. It's about me taking better care of myself. And I appreciate you understanding this. The goal is to keep it calm, brief, and clear. You see, you don't need to over-explain or apologize excessively or justify yourself. State it and stop talking. You see, some people would rather skip this step and let their actions speak. I find that people actually do better with a little forewarning. And the thing is, when you forewarn people about your intention or what you want to do and the boundary you're setting, it will mean less chance of you backtracking after all that progress. And there's a higher chance of acceptance when there is a resistance to the boundary. So the fourth step in the name it framework is enforce. So here you're following through on what you did previously. And this part is a part that most people will definitely want to skip. And it's the part that actually matters the most. You see, the thing is that a boundary only becomes real when you enforce it. If you say you're leaving the room and then you stay, you've just taught people your boundaries don't mean anything. The first time you enforce a boundary will feel very uncomfortable. You might actually feel some guilt. You might feel anxious, and the thing is, that's very normal because you're doing something that you're not used to doing. Now, feel that discomfort and do it anyway. You see, the feeling will pass. Your self-trust will grow. And over time, enforcing boundaries becomes second nature. Now, if you want to take this deeper, I've created something special for you. If this series is resonating, I created the full Back to Basics toolkit for you. It includes the scripts, workbooks, journal prompts, and a reset audio so you can actually implement this. It's completely free. Just click the link in the description to download it, and it'll land in your inbox immediately. I'm giving it to you because I want you to win at this. Now, before we wrap up, I want to give you something. Consider this your permission slip from me to you. You are allowed to say no without explaining. You are allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to prioritize your peace over someone else's comfort. You are allowed to disappoint people and still be a good person. You're allowed to protect your energy like your life depends on it. Because honestly, it actually does. It's about becoming the truest version of yourself, not this cold and uncaring person. Just you showing up as you truly want to. Okay, so I want to give you some homework for this week. And I'm keeping it simple because we're going back to the basics. So your assignment is that you need to start your resentment log. Just do it for 3 days. Notice where the feelings show up. Identify one boundary you need to set. Just one. Use the name it framework to write it out. And one extra thing you can do, you don't have to do it, actually communicate and enforce it this week with someone. That's it. Just start small and build momentum. And if you do this, come back and tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. Now, if you only remember one thing from this episode, it's that a boundary is what you will accept plus the action you'll take to protect it. This is your foundation. Everything else we build in this series sits on top of this. So next week, we're going even deeper. Now that you've tasted a little bit of the power of saying no, we're going to ground you in the why. We're talking about values. Because when you know what you stand for, boundaries become so much easier. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Hit the button now if you haven't. And don't forget to grab your free Back to Basics toolkit. The link is in the description. It's the perfect companion to everything we talked about today. Thank you for being here. If this stirred something in you, send it to someone who'd get it too. You never know who's holding the same thing quietly. I'm Lolly, and I'll see you next time. Until then, keep choosing yourself. Bye.